All right, guys, we move on to the co-main event. Let's talk about that. At UFC 299, Dustin Poirier defeated Benoit Saint Denis and once again impressed the masses. Team Makhachev, more specifically, Ali Abdelaziz, who is Islam Makhachev's manager, seems open to Islam Makhachev defending his lightweight title versus Poirier in June when the UFC goes to Saudi Arabia. With other title contenders ahead in the pecking order, but also booked, what do you think of this possible fight booking? Fair or foul? Goes?
I mean, look, I think it's foul, but if anybody's deserved to have a little foul in their life, it's probably been Dustin Poirier with what he's accomplished throughout his entire career. Taking on that matchup, that's a guy that a lot of people didn't want to fight, and he took that fight. Kind of did the UFC a solid there. I think he's kind of deserved to call his own shot a little bit, but first things first, we got to get through UFC 300, right? Like, let's see what plays out there. If you look at Oliveira, if you look at Justin Gaethje, if both those guys get wins, we're going to have an absolute nightmare on our hands. What it could come down to is timing. That might be in the favor of Dustin Poirier, but really, when you start to break down the three of them and what they've done and who deserves what, Dustin Poirier is probably at the bottom of that, right? Um, you look at Dustin Poirier. I mean, his last loss to Justin Gaethje in that little not circle, but the back and forth that they've had, that puts him behind Justin Gaethje. If you look at Oliveira, you could say, all right, well, he beat Justin Gaethje, but he also lost to the champion. Justin Gaethje would be a fresh matchup. There's so many ways of just kind of playing this around. Really, what it's going to end up coming down to is who comes out unscathed, what the timing is like. The UFC plays by their own rules, man. Sometimes the rankings are there. Most of the time they're just not. Uh, Erase the ranking, and I promise you, there's a dollar sign behind that number, and that's how things get run. So really, you got to look at what position we're in after UFC 300. But if they gave it to Dustin Poirier, I think it's one of those reactions where I think a lot of people would go, "Hey," and then 2 seconds later go, "All right."
All right, all right. I'll let them know. Yeah. Sorry, goes. Armenia's tripping. They said you forgot to mention our guy. You mentioned Oliveira and Gaethje, and
As
let's
I'm
not
saying, if
forget
they get their win,
Arman Sarukian's in the mix. I had to kind of calm things down a little bit. Big John, what do you think, man? Fair or foul for them to be possibly entertaining a Poirier Makhachev matchup, given the fact that all these other guys are booked?
Look, it's exactly what goes to say. It's timing. Timing is what makes matches at times possible, and other times it's not possible. It's injuries, it's all these things. And you have Charles and Justin, they're going to be in UFC 300. You don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people think Justin's just going to run through a guy named Max Holloway. That's not an easy fight. Let's just, look at it. Charles Oliveira, he's got this guy, like you just said, Arman Sarukian. I mean, they both, when you face a guy that's a top guy, you're going to come out banged up. It is just part of training camp and the fight itself. I look at Dustin Poirier has put himself into a position of timing. He has done what the UFC has asked of him. He took a fight with a guy that had a way lower ranking. A lot of guys don't want to do that. He went out there and he put on a very impressive performance as far as he was in trouble and he kept digging deep. And you know what? Saint Denis was trying to drown him, couldn't do it. He knocks him out. He puts himself in a position to possibly get that shot for the title. And everything that Dustin Poirier has done throughout his career, I believe, makes that a good title shot.
All right, great stuff. Nolan, man, what do you think here? Fair or foul for them to even consider Poirier versus Makhachev in June in Saudi Arabia, considering all the other top cats are booked?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, the timeline, it's not like somebody one of the fighters from UFC 300, whoever kind of positions themselves as the front runner for the next title shot, will be screwed and have to sit out a year or wait for a whole nother cycle to come through. Would they even be able to go again in June? Right? I mean, that's only 5 or 6 weeks after UFC 300. Is this Saudi Arabia card? So for me, I think if the UFC is just looking to book something, kind of get a big main event, two big names on the books for Saudi Arabia. I mean, who knows how much that plays into this whole thing too? Which fight does Saudi Arabia want? It seems like they might have a little bit more say in what happens here than some of the other tourism boards that the UFC has been signing these deals with, right? So I think it's fair. I think Dustin Poirier certainly done enough over the span of his career to kind of get a bone thrown his way. And after Saturday night, it seems like a lot of fans are kind of backing that idea as well.
Jono 808 says Makhachev mauls Poirier 1 throughout 5. Wow. Cayman Writer says, excuse me, that's another comment there. Crisco Wild says, I want to see Makhachev fight both Poirier and Gaethje. It doesn't really matter to me in which order, though Justin should get the first shot. And then here's another comment I want to chime in on. Me Diamond 44. He says, pretty hilarious that Ali would publicly lobby for Poirier to get a title shot against Islam, considering he also represents Justin Gaethje. I got to imagine that he checked in with Justin Gaethje before he put that out. And one thing I know about Justin Gaethje that he's been pretty clear about, he does not take fights on late notice. He likes at least 3 months to prepare. So back to what you guys said, timing, it probably wouldn't work out for him anyway, unless he pulled a McGregor over Aldo 13-second win, and came out unscathed. And even then, I wouldn't know, because he's got to decompress from the fight and the training camp. The training camp is basically all the work, folks. The rest is just fun. So keep that in mind, me Diamond. I imagine that got cleared at some point. But I think it's a hardcore knowledge comment there from you, and all those comments and questions that come through the chat. I'll try to get through some of the best ones. Let me get back to the show here. I want to ask you guys a question. Going back to Goes, if Poirier misses out on a title shot, who would you pair him up with next?
It's such a nightmare, man, because you have to look at this as a business, right? The UFC, I don't know if they want to give him a monster, but it's kind of hard to avoid in that division, especially when you consider the type of fighters that he's fought throughout his entire career. I guess Gamrot maybe, but that's a tough
teammate though.
They're also teammates.
Yeah, they're also teammates, but you don't have very many options. Like, if it were me, I would give him somebody along the lines of a Bobby Green who he's already fought. But that's the thing. You're going to run into a lot of guys that he's already fought. They'd have to be some kind of placeholder fight. If you, having to fight Benoit Saint Denis and then another top level talent like that's a lot to ask out of Dustin Poirier. And then then your reward is Makhachev. I mean, dude, these divisions are insane.
Big John, how about you? You got a name for me? Who do you think you would match up Poirier with if he doesn't go to Saudi Arabia for a title fight?
If he doesn't go to Saudi Arabia and get that title fight, you can take a look again. There's a lot of guys that are unavailable. You're not going to be able to put him against Justin Gaethje again. You're not going to put him against Saruki, and they're kind of teammates also. So you got Saruki and Gamrot that are kind of out of the equation. But there is this guy. He's called the Tarantula, Jalen Turner. That would be an interesting fight between him and Dustin. I would love to see Dustin Poirier going up against Jalen Turner. I think it would be freaking lights out.
Okay. How about you, Nolan? Who do you like here for Poirier if he misses out on the title fight?
It's so tough, man, because we're also playing with the whole thing with Dustin only really taking fights that he wants too. I think obviously that was the big surprise that he took this one, because tough, risk reward. It seems like he's really balancing that, and it's sometimes tough to get him on board as well. So I don't know, man. It's really difficult because a lot of the guys that are open at 155 right now are guys that have cross-trained or trained at ATT. So I do like Big John's suggestion of Jalen Turner. Outside of that, I think we'll have to wait and have some things play out before there's really any more good candidates to really think is a viable option here.
Josh Wallace in the chat says that would be one hell of a fight. Dustin versus the Tarantula. Ziggy814 says Dustin versus Edwards. And then Pro Fights Info says shout out to the legend Big John. Also, last weekend's fights were amazing. Haven't had that much fun watching fights with a group or friends in a while. Guys, let me throw this at you. If McGregor takes Chandler, how about Diaz versus Poirier? And if McGregor takes Diaz, how about running it back with Chandler? Would Poirier even want that? I don't know, because like you guys say, it seems like he needs a certain level of name value. He already kind of did the BSD thing. No disrespect to him. We know he's a killer, up and coming, but he kind of already did that. What would you guys think of? I really love Diaz versus Poirier.
I love that matchup, but it's just trying to get Nate Diaz in a room and get him to agree to something like that would be. And Dana kind of had some comments towards Diaz where you could tell he's just sort of over him a little bit. But yeah, if they could make that happen, I think that fits perfectly.
Yeah. All right.